Hey everybody, my name's Sid and I'm excited to be with you again on episode 2 on our series on community, and we're talking about brokenness in community. Like, how do we get broken and what's our way forward, towards healing, flourishing life? So I was in high school and I grew up in a small town in Manitoba. I've mentioned that before. And I remember that I was supposed to go and play at a provincial playdown tournament, but the night before I was staying at my buddy's place before I was going to go to the tournament. And here's what's really interesting. As I go to my buddy's place, I know he has a dirt bike and I'm really excited about driving his dirt bike, but my dad has already said to me, he's like, hey son, listen, you're not very good at driving dirt bikes, so maybe don't do that, because if you keep doing it, one day you're gonna hurt yourself and not be able to do what you really love, which is play baseball, right? So I know that's there, but when I get to my buddy's place, my dad drops me off and it's the night before baseball, I'm not thinking that, right? So I get to his place and right away I'm like, hey dude, can I go for a rip on your dirt bike? He's like, yeah, let's do it. So I get out, I get on his dirt bike, I'm driving around the yard, and then I see him at the far end of the yard, and I think how cool would it be if I drove at him really fast and then slammed on the brakes at the last minute? Who doesn't think that's cool, right? So I start ripping at him on the dirt bike, and you can tell, he's starting to panic, right? And then as I get closer, I kind of start panicking because in this moment, I forget where the back brake is on the stupid dirt bike. So in my panic, what I do is I grab the front brake as hard as I can, and that brake worked really well. So locks up the front tire, boom, bike flips over, I go flying off, bike lands right on top of me, totally breaks my ankle. So I remember I'm lying there, my buddy gets the bike off, and then he helps me into the house, and I realize I gotta call my dad. He had just dropped me off a couple of hours before, and now I gotta call him and tell him that I broke my ankle driving dirt bike. So I call him up, and I remember I'm like, hey dad, he's like, yeah son, I'm like, dad, you gotta come pick me up. And he's like, why do I gotta come pick you up? And I'm like, I kind of broke my ankle. He's like, how did you break your ankle? I'm like, I don't know, I was just walking, suddenly just broke, I just remember so clearly in that moment that I was so embarrassed about what had happened because of what I'd done, because of the brokenness, right? I remember just thinking I wanted to blame someone so bad, I wanted to blame my buddy for letting me drive a dirt bike. I wanted to blame my dad for driving me off at someone's place, right, where there was a dirt bike. But the reality was that I had to come to grips with the truth that the reason I was broken, man, it was my fault. I was the one who'd left me broken. Hey, you know what? We understand brokenness, right? We live in a world where there's so much brokenness. Our bodies break down, and you guys don't really get that yet. But as you get older, you begin to realize how much your body starts to break down. Not only do our bodies break down, but creation feels broken. So, we're filming this in the midst of a pandemic, right? So we understand the brokenness of creation. It's not working the way it should. But not only does do we physically break down, not only does is creation broken, but relationally and emotionally we're broken. I remember when I was at camp and there was a young girl that I met, and man, life was hard for her, really hard for her. And I remember partway through camp, I discovered that her arms were pretty marked. And I had a chance to sit down with her, and I just said, hey, tell me about what's going on your arms. And she was just really quiet, and then she said, is it that obvious? And I was like, yeah, I can see it. And then after a bit, she just goes, sometimes life is just so hard, and it hurts so bad. And the only way I know to get some relief is if I harm myself. And I remember just in the midst, as we sat together thinking, man, our reality is it's broken. There's so much that's broken. And I think as a culture, we're trying to figure out what's caused the brokenness and how do we fix it, right? And we think that maybe money might fix it. If we just get more stuff, somehow that could fix our brokenness. Or sometimes we think if we get enough knowledge, that'll fix it. If we could just work that out, or if we could just be more tolerant. And these things can be really good things and really helpful things. But what the scriptures tell us is that when it comes to brokenness, whether it's ourselves, whether it's creation, physically, or in community, when we find community to be broken, that at the very foundation, it's actually our sin that leaves us broken. Hey, here's what I want you to do. I want you to circle up in your groups, and I want you to talk a little bit about what are causes for brokenness within our community, and what are ways that sometimes we respond to the brokenness in our community. Go ahead and spend some time talking about that. So in Genesis chapter 3, we find the beginning of the story of humanity and why humanity is so broken the way that it is. Why our communities are so broken in the way that they are. So here's the deal. God's made Adam and Eve, man and woman. And it says in Genesis chapter 2, verse 25, it says, the man and his wife were both naked and they felt no shame. And it's not just talking about like physically naked. What it's actually talking about is this idea that they have total trust with each other. They can be completely open, honest with each other, and there's nothing to worry. It's complete trust, complete openness, complete intimacy, and absolutely no fear. Like, can you imagine what that would be like? To be able to live in such a way where you never have to impress, you never have to try to show out. You could just relax with who you are and the friends that you're with. Like I remember when I was first starting to be a youth pastor, and I'm going to Canmore, Alberta to candidate to become a youth pastor for these kids that live in the mountains, right? And I remember one of the things we were going to do is go skiing. And I'd grown up in the prairies, so I'd never been skiing in the mountains before. And I remember just thinking, man, I need to impress these kids. Like I was feeling the pressure to kind of show out with what, at the hill so that they could think I'm cool and want me to be there, all that kind of stuff. So I remember we went to Sunshine Mountain, and we're climbing into this gondola that's going to take us up about 20 minutes up the hill. And that's where we start skiing from. And I remember I'm in the gondola with this little guy named Justin. Justin was so cool, grade 6. And his mom is with us, and we're going up. And Justin is like wicked cool skier. He's got all the gear. And then his mom begins to like go on and on about what a great skier Justin is, how the day before they'd been at Lake Louise with European photographers taking pictures of Justin jumping off cliffs and doing all. And I remember just thinking to myself, why don't you jump out of here and we'll take a picture of that, right? Because I'm like, this guy is like, I'm feeling intimidated, insecure, and like almost afraid in the moment because I'm wondering like, can I measure up? Will you like me? Can you imagine what it would be like to never have to worry about what other people think about you, right? To just be completely open and safe within our communities. That's what it was, in the garden before sin entered. And then it says in Genesis chapter 3, says this, starting in verse 1. Now the serpent was more crafty than any of the wild animals the Lord God had made. He said to the woman, did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden? And the woman said to the serpent, we may eat from the fruit of the trees in the garden, but God did say, you must not eat fruit from the tree that is in the middle of the garden, and you must not touch it, or you will die. You will not surely die, the serpent said to the woman, for God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be open, you will be like God, knowing good and evil. When the woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good for food and pleasing to the eye, and also desirable for gaining wisdom, she took some, ate it. She also gave some to her husband, who was with her, and he ate it. Okay. So this is like the beginning story of all brokenness in humanity and creation, right? And what causes it? Like when you read the story, you go like God gave one rule to Adam and Eve. He said, listen, don't eat fruit from this tree in the middle of the garden. And so then the serpent comes, tempts them, says you should do it because, it'll make you awesome. And so she disobeys God. She eats the fruit. And that's the moment when sin entered humanity and everything became broken from there on out. Now, when you think about that, you're kind of like, hey, seriously, what's the big deal with eating a fruit? Like, really? Like it seems like that was a big consequence to just simply breaking a rule. But you see, that's the point. When Eve ate the fruit, it wasn't just that she broke a rule, it's that she broke a relationship. Essentially what she was saying to God is she said, God, I don't trust you. I don't believe that you're right, nor do you have rights in my life. And so she's saying, I don't respect you, God. And the second thing she said by not trusting him, by breaking the relationship, was that I don't believe you're good. I don't believe that what you want for me is good. And that's the foundation of sin, right? When Jesus was asked, what's the greatest commandment? He said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. So all, like Jesus wants all of us, right? But the essence of sin is any time that we love something more than we actually love God. So try this for a second. This wedding band that I have here, my wife gave this to me. Can you imagine if let's say my wedding band broke at some point in time, maybe I lost it, and I came to my wife, right? And I went to her, I said, hey babe, remember that wedding band you got me? And she's like, oh yeah. I said, yeah, pretty cool, but the wedding band actually broke. And she's like, oh, that's too bad. Maybe we should get another one. And then what if I turned to her and said, yeah, you better get another one because like I really need the wedding band. Like I love my wedding band. And what if I said to her, if you don't hook me up with another wedding band, I'm not sure we can actually go on. Like I don't know if this, can you imagine what would happen to the relationship? I mean, it would already be broken because what I'm saying is I love the gift more than I love the giver. And the relationship would be broken. Hey, that's what happens. Anytime we love something more than we love God, we're breaking the relationship with our Creator, with our good Creator. And the very essence of sin is saying that we love something more than we actually love God. And this is what happened with Adam and Eve. Eve chose to love something more than she loved God, and that was the foundation of sin and the foundation of brokenness. And it left them broken in two ways. First, it left them broken in their relationship with God. So listen to what it says, verse 8. Then the man and his wife heard the sound of the Lord God as he was walking in the garden in the cool of the day, and they hid from the Lord God among the trees of the garden. But the Lord God called to the man, "Where are you?" And he answered, "I heard you in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid." Did you hear that? For the first time, he's afraid of God. He hides. Why? I think for all of us, none of us, we want to be exposed. None of us want to be exposed. We don't want to be exposed as a fraud. We don't want to be exposed as weak, dirty, evil, scared. I mean, it's the reason why we put so much effort into putting just the right picture on our social media posts, because we don't want to be exposed as like broken. And for the first time in Adam's life, sin had left him broken, and he was afraid of God. And this is what our sin does. The first thing our sin does is it leaves us broken in our relationship with God. But the other thing that sin does is it also leaves us broken in our relationship with each other. So listen to what happens. In Genesis 3, verse 11, it says, "And he said, 'Who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree that I commanded you not to eat from?' And the man said, 'The woman you put here with me, she gave me some fruit from the tree, and I ate it.' And then the Lord God said to the woman, 'What is this you have done?' The woman said, 'The serpent deceived me, and I ate it.'" Did you hear it? Adam gets confronted, Eve gets confronted, and what do? They both blame. They attack and they blame someone else. And this is what happened. Our shame and our guilt, our sin, leaves us broken first in our relationship with God, and then it leaves us broken in our relationship with each other. And this is why community is so hard. Why it's so hard for us to just radically love each other. Why it's so hard for us to become just open with each other. Why it's so hard for us to truly care for each other. Why? Because our sin has left us broken. Okay, let's get into our groups again, and let's just talk a little bit more about the consequences of our sin that leaves us broken. So, my oldest son, Peyton, we used to love going to the swimming pool all the time. Both boys loved going to the swimming pool, right? And we go to the pool, and our cousins would come, and we'd have a great time. I remember this one day. We're at the pool, and I'm with Peyton and Cole. We're in the deep end. And Peyton, what he would love to do is get on the rope swing, with the ball on the bottom. He'd swing out into the middle of the pool, and then he'd fall in the water, and I'd be in the middle of that area, right? Because it's quite a ways away from the side, can't swim very well. And I'd always grab him, take him to the side, he'd do it again. Well, his cousins were about to come and play with us, so I turned to Peyton and I said, "Hey buddy, when your cousins come, if you want to go on the rope swing, make sure you talk to me first so that I can come and help you, because you can't do it by yourself." So the cousins show up, we're playing. About 10 minutes in, I'm all of a sudden realizing Peyton's not with us. And I start looking around, and I see him in line for the rope swing. But he hadn't told me he was going to do it. So I'm like, oh, this is a problem. And at first I was going to go grab him out of the line. And then I thought to myself, no, this is a good chance to learn a lesson. So what I do is I kind of sneak out in the water around the other parents, a little bit low. And I'm watching Peyton, but he can't see me. He gets on the ball, swings out into the pool, drops in. And then I remember he comes up, and I'm kind of moving pretty close. And when he comes up, at first, he's really excited. He did this by himself, man. This was his thing. But then as he looks around and realizes the side of the pool is so far away, you can just see panic start to come over him. So he starts to panic, and at first I think I should save him, right now. And then I'm like, nah, maybe I'll let him really learn the lesson. So I just give him a couple of more seconds, and he starts to panic, and I come up behind him, and all of a sudden he turns around, and he sees me whoa, and he just latches on. I'm like, I got you, son, I got you. Hey, here's the point I want to make. You guys, our sin leaves us broken But the great news is that God does not leave us. You guys, this is the gospel. The gospel, or the good news, is the reality that in our brokenness, God comes to us. He comes in his son, Jesus Christ, who becomes a human being. He lives a perfect life, and then he goes onto the cross and he takes our brokenness on himself. He takes our sin on himself, and then he places his rightness on us when we choose to give our lives back to him. He literally becomes broken for us so that we can experience life. And this is the gospel, you guys. So individually, we come to Jesus as he comes to us. We experience his forgiveness, and not just his forgiveness, we experience his healing. And then because of our relationship with God being restored, and we can be secure, right? Like we are at peace with the Creator again. Because we can be at peace with the Creator, we can now go and be like agents of restoration to others who are broken. We can lean into communities that are broken, and we can be the people that start bringing life again because we bring the reality of Jesus, the experience we've had from him because of the gospel, and we become to be people who love like Jesus loved to those around us, and we can take the risks. We can be vulnerable. We can be loving. We can care, knowing that someone might reject us, but even if they reject us, we're okay because God does not reject us. You guys, that's the gospel. And this is just the truth that we get to rest in. That while our sin leaves us broken, God does not leave us. And Jesus Christ came to be broken for us so that we could be healed, restored, renewed, recreated. And now we get to go and live out that reality for others so they too can experience the love of Jesus in our communities. Can you imagine if that's what our community was like? If that's what defined our community? That in the same way that Jesus went to love and heal the broken, as people who have been healed and loved by Jesus, we would now go and love and heal the broken together. How amazing would that be? I really believe that's God's vision for our reality.